The last episode ended with one hell of a cliffhanger, because Joel, being possibly mortally injured, after being stabbed by a hunter that they came across, really looked like he was about to die, while Ellie was standing above him, telling him that he cannot leave because she couldn't make it without him. So, will he make it, or does Ellie have to continue her journey alone? And what else happened in this episode? If you like to find out and want to hear my take on it, then join me for this review video. The episode picks up by showing us that Joel is still alive, but is fighting for it. Ellie apparently managed to carry him on horseback into an empty house in an abandoned area. While she is willing to do everything she can to save his life, he apparently thinks there is nothing to be done. So in an apparent effort to save her life, he pushes her away, physically, to make her leave and save herself. Possibly fearing that the guys that they ran into might follow them and finish both of them off. Ellie takes a long look at him and then actually moves into the direction of the exit. And the moment she touches the doorknob to leave, we are treated to a flashback. In it we find Ellie before she is bitten by one of the infected. When we meet her, she is a cadet in a military academy, training to be a soldier for Fedra. However, she seems to have disciplinary issues, most likely based on the fact that people around her seem to underestimate her. So when she is called out by another cadet, they get into a fight, and while she gets a shiner, the other girl ends up in hospital. Being given one last chance by her commanding officer, she actually plans to behave better in the future. This is when an old friend of hers is showing up, Riley, a girl that used to be a fellow cadet, but vanished a few months ago and now returns, revealing to Ellie that she joined the Fireflies, the arch enemies of Fedra. Something with what Ellie has some issues, because even though she knows Fedra is not the nicest of organizations, she still thinks that she can do good from within. While she thinks that the Fireflies are mostly terrorists and do not care about civilian life. However, Riley invites Ellie to tag along for a night of fun, because she has planned out a fun night for the two of them that she hopes Ellie also would enjoy a lot. After roaming a little bit around in town, Riley eventually leads Ellie into an abandoned mall, where she had found out that Fedra accidentally turned on the power again, so they actually can enjoy a lot of the attractions in there.
Turn right, open the door, tell me when you're there. Go.
Fine. Here, now what?
As Ellie grew up without experiencing anything like a mall, she of course is fascinated by the smallest things, like the escalators that she is using for the first time in her life. And she wonders a lot about the products that they were selling in the mall, like the shoes where she can understand the function but questions the comfort of wearing them.
What?
Nothing, I was just trying to imagine you wearing that.
Shut up!
Tonight I'm gonna show you the 4 wonders of the mall.
And her first stop is a merry-go-round, which they were able to enjoy for a while until the carousel suddenly stops due to a technical problem. Here Riley opens up a little bit about why she left. Their second stop is a photo booth, where they take some photos of themselves in funny positions. The next surprise leads them then to an old arcade, where Ellie gets to play the first video game in her life, which is Mortal Kombat. Meanwhile, we see that the sound that they make while walking through the mall, and especially being in the arcade, is waking up an infected, who apparently was lying there still for quite a while. After Riley is showing Ellie the place where she had stayed the last few weeks, Ellie finds some explosives that obviously were stored away by Riley, which led to a really heated discussion. A discussion which made Ellie want to leave. To stop her, Riley finally opens up about the fact that she was ordered by the Fireflies to leave and be stationed in another city, and this will likely be her last day in town. This, however, especially after enjoying that day so much that they spent together, isn't helping Ellie's mood. It just pisses her off more and she is leaving. However, soon after she decides to turn around and get back to Riley, and finds her in their 4th stop for the evening, which is a costume and novelties store. There they honestly talk everything out, and Ellie, knowing that Riley really wants to be a Firefly, actually tells her that she should leave and make the best out of it. They then put on some masks and turn on some music to dance to it. This is the moment where Ellie told Riley to please don't leave and kisses her. And while they both are figuring out that they had the same feelings for each other for all the time that they knew each other, they also promised each other to stay together and figure it out. But just in that moment, the infected is showing up, which the two of them fight off.
No!
But both ended up being bitten. They both decided not to take what Riley called the easy way out by shooting themselves, but instead wanted to wait it out, staying together as long as possible, trying to fight it as long as they can, which is the exact same moment where the show is cutting back to the here and now, where Ellie decides not to leave Joel even though he pushed her away and starts to search the whole place for something that will help her close his wound and save his life, which she found in form of thread and needle, which she then uses to stitch him up. And that is where the episode ends. It took me a while longer to get to a review video for this episode, because I wasn't 100% sure how to approach the rating. Because I have to admit that I spoiled myself a little bit by finally finishing the game. And I even played the solo mission Left Behind, which basically is the basis for this episode, the day before I watched the show. So when I read the title of the episode, I was pretty sure I knew exactly how this episode would play out. And also the cliffhanger was a little bit diminished by me finding out playing the game that Joel would survive. So I needed a few days to let it sink in and to be sure that I will treat the episode fairly, because it was my own fault that I spoiled myself that way, making me experience the episode differently than I would have had with an open mind. And of course, to get it out of the way, the episode again was very well done, so nothing big to worry about. On the other hand, of course, now I'm able to address the differences between the show and the game more precisely than before, which should allow me to offer you a little bit more insight. So let's do a quick comparison between the game and the show, as this episode clearly offers a perfect opportunity, as it is for all intents and purposes covering the whole single player campaign that was called Left Behind, like the title of this episode. And I can let you know that there are a lot of similarities and also a lot of deviations, but every time they strayed away from the game's storyline, they did it just to shorten it a little bit, but kept all the important plot points alive. And with that, I think they did a great job. The first big difference between game and show is that in the game, Ellie also had to fight off a lot of hunters that were after them, who wanted to take revenge for the ones that Joel killed off earlier. That also took place in a mall, though in a different one. And it ended with Ellie finding a first aid kit which contained thread and needle, so she was able to stitch Joel up. Something that in the TV show she just found in the house, which sufficed to just shorten that whole storyline. However, losing that was reducing Ellie again to a little bit of a damsel in distress, which in the game she could show she is far from. On the other hand, it was fair game to leave it out, because in the game, it was supposed to be played after you were finished with the whole game, so showing how tough she could be might be a little bit too early at that point. The flashback basically hold all the same highlights, from the carousel over the photo booth to the novelty store. Even the arcade was there, but there all the games were broken, so they had to play something just by using their imagination. In the game they then were having a water gun battle, where they were running all over the place. It there also ended with them dancing and telling each other that they want to stay together after kissing. Of course, as the game is an action game, there were also a lot more infected than just the one that attacked them in the TV show. And they had to run from them, fighting off a lot of them, but ending up basically in the same place, both being bitten by fighting them off. Where I should highlight that Riley had already reached safety, but turned back to save Ellie, which was the reason she got bitten too. They pretty much had the same discussion and were planning to just stick it out and see what happens. And all the key conversations between the two of them and all the most important scenarios were almost taken verbatim from the game. So they did a great job here in preserving everything while condensing it to the necessary stuff that we need to see. The big difference I think I also should highlight though is the fact that in the game, Ellie was raised by Marlene, the head of the Fireflies. She was basically her substitute mother after her real mother had died pretty early in her life. They basically parted ways when Marlene became a Firefly, because in the games Ellie was also not a big fan of the Fireflies, but she was not as opposed to them as she is in the TV show. Here they really nicely highlighted that fact in the scene where Ellie talked to her commanding officer, who was reiterating the fact that he also wasn't the biggest fan of how Fedra was handling things, but he was convinced that he could reach something from within to help the people, which is better than doing nothing.
You follow the rules, you become an officer. We're the only thing holding this all together.
And that is the reasoning that Ellie also adopted. And I guess that pretty much explains why in the game she was staying with Marlene willfully and was willing to go wherever she needs to go, while in the TV show she was held captive and had to be forced to do the things Marlene wanted her to do. Without spoiling you, but knowing what happens next in the game, I'm quite curious if that change in dynamic is important for the rest of the story. We will find out soon. As a last call out, I want to highlight the attention to detail the creators have applied to make sure that not only the gist of a story gets transported, but also the small things are brought in that you recognize from the game. For instance, the bunny you see on the screen of a photo booth was exactly the same that you see in the game. And in the novelty store they also have the exactly same masks as in the game, the werewolf and the clown, which was a really nice touch. And as a nice gag, Ellie is wearing the same clothes she is wearing in this level of the game, at least at the start of the episode, just not a sleeveless version of it. However, before leaving, she is then changing into that set of clothes in which we meet her in the first episode of the show. The acting and technical merits were also great again. And like with previous episodes, the main focus here was more on the production design, especially the whole mall, than on creature effects, because we only had that one infected in the whole episode. However, knowing that there is still a lot of story that needs to be told, I'm a little bit worried if the next 2 episodes might pull that off, especially now seeing that one whole episode was dedicated to Ellie's solo adventure. Which is something I welcome because it really gives us a nice insight into her character, even though it wasn't really part of the main game. But maybe if they apply the same strategy like they did here in just keeping the gist and getting rid of all the fluff, then they might pull it off to tell the whole story with the 2 remaining episodes. Though I expect them both to be longer than an hour. Then it shouldn't be a problem, I guess. One thing I preferred in the game though was the fact that Joel was basically knocked out when Ellie was trying to help him. So he didn't push her physically away. That felt a little bit irritating to me, because all of a sudden Joel appeared to be a little bit stronger than he should be, which here felt out of place, because if he is already stronger then he might survive, and Ellie has a better chance with him than on her own. And if he was worried that they might be tracked and she for that reason should go away, then the hunters might also track her after she left him behind. And then she is not better off than with him. And also, even though it comes from a good place that he wants to save her, it felt a little bit contradictory to what we've seen in the previous episodes, where he embraced her basically as his daughter. He could just have told her that it is better for her to leave and try to convince her that way than to use physical force, but that might be just my opinion. With that being said, let's look at the rating, but before we go there, let me ask you to like and share this video if you enjoyed it so far. And if you are no subscriber yet, then maybe consider to change that. By also hitting the notification bell, you will get a heads up for most of my new videos. Now, for the rating. Like I said before, the technical values and everything acting-wise was great again. So once more it should be a score in the higher regions, where the show continues to prove us that it has a constantly high quality. My biggest issue with this episode and the main plot is the fact that Joel, still being alive, seems to be a little bit of a miracle, especially since at the end of last episode he looked like he already died. But since this is something that exactly that way happened also in the game, I cannot blame the show for it. While on the other hand, if I judge the show on its own, I shouldn't ignore things that are not that plausible just because it was adapted from source material of a different medium. But like I said in the last review, I was already willing to suspend my disbelief a little bit to swallow that pill, but the fact that Joel, after his injury, was portrayed much stronger in the show than in the game made it even more unbelievable. I also thought the game here was doing a little bit of a better job than the show when it comes to the fact to reveal to us that he is still alive. Because in the game we continued for a while just playing Ellie, and we didn't know if he survived or not. That was shown to us along the way, and in the show they just started with that. Where the reason for that is very likely that, like I said before, this episode is completely dedicated to telling the story of a standalone mission called Left Behind. and they had started the same way as in the show. Yet still, upkeeping the suspense a little bit in the viewer by not showing him from the get-go might have raised the thrill a little bit. And I guess that's one of the reasons why I was not able to review the episode straight away, because here for me there was no suspense at all because I knew what would happen. Again, something I cannot blame the show for, because I spoiled myself by way of playing the game through to its very end. Something no one asked me to do. Would I have recorded my review straight away, I might not have come to that conclusion, but now I can appreciate how they approached it, but still think they should have drawn it out a little bit longer to just tease the viewers with the question of if Joel is still alive. I assume no one would have expected him to die, especially in the TV show. In the game it might have been more likely. But in any case, I liked that part in the game a little bit more. At the end of the day, even though the game covered the moments after Joel broke down from his horse better than in the show, the way they did it in the series was the only way to bring in that standalone story, which I very much appreciated, because that was a story worth telling. They could have made it a standalone movie after the show, like with the game, where they brought that story in as a piece of content that you could download and play after the game, but from a continuity standpoint, they did the right thing. And even though I might now sound like a broken record, I'm scoring this episode with 8 out of 10 points. It was great and most things were done very well. I don't want to get higher than that because of the things I just mentioned, but it also is definitely not lower than 8. And 8, again, like I say with each episode, is a damn high score, especially if they keep that up over the complete runtime of the show, where some of the episodes I even scored slightly higher. If the show can uphold that for the next 2 episodes as well, then I can say for sure that the whole show gets a score of 8 points out of 10 or even higher, which is still a rarity in today's world, at least in my humble opinion. What about you? How did you react to the fact that Joel is still alive, and did you have to suspend your disbelief a little bit, or was it completely believable for you how they pulled it off? What do you think will be next in this show? Will he completely recover, or is Joel still on the verge of dying anyway? Whatever it is you like to share, let me know in the comments. So much for now, see you next time, and thanks for watching. Both being bitten by fighting them off. Where I should highlight that Riley had already reached safety, but turned back to save Ellie, which was the reason she got bitten too.